Welcome to a new daily top AskReddit video. Today's topic.
Who are some people who died telling us the truth? Ignaz Semmelweis, the first doctor to implement hand washing in hospitals. It's saved millions of lives and is the single greatest innovation in medicine. For his radical theory, that doctors were killing patients by not washing their hands. He was shunned from the medical profession by his peers. The rejection and failure to adopt hand washing drove him mad. His rival took his job and had him sent to the asylum. He died 4 days after being committed, from injuries he sustained from being beaten in the ward. Years after his death, his theories about hand washing were proven correct. Today he's known as the savior of mothers, because he first proved hand washing saved lives by implementing it in the birthing ward, where 1 in 4 women died at the hospital during birth. This was because doctors would handle cadavers and then immediately attend to birthing mothers, infecting them. After hand washing was implemented, the rate of death for birthing mothers dropped to less than 5%. Damn. Only story I remember, related to the medical field but unrelated to the main post, is according to historical accounts. Rubber gloves were invented in 1894 by a man named William Stewart Halstead, who was a surgeon at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. At the time, surgeons frequently experienced skin irritation and rashes from the harsh antiseptics used during surgery. To combat this, Halstead began wearing rubber gloves while performing surgery. This not only protected his hands from the irritation caused by the antiseptic but also prevented infection in the patients he operated on. Eventually, other surgeons began adopting the practice and rubber gloves became a standard part of surgical procedure. He had them made for his scrub nurse, who he was in love with and married the next year. https://www.ncb.nlm.nih.gov/pmc/articles/pmc2943454/. In the winter of 1889 and 1890. I cannot recall the month. The nurse in charge of my operating room complained that the solutions of mercuric chloride produced a dermatitis of her arms and hands. As she was an unusually efficient woman, I gave the matter my consideration and one day in New York requested the Goodyear Rubber Company to make as an experiment 2 pair of thin rubber gloves with gauntlets. On trial these proved to be so satisfactory that additional gloves were ordered. In the autumn, on my return to town, an assistant who passed the instruments and threaded the needles was also provided with rubber gloves to wear at the operations. At first the operator wore them only when exploratory incisions into joints were made. After a time the assistants became so accustomed to working in gloves that they also wore them as operators and would remark that they seemed to be less expert with the bare hands than with the gloved hands. Vladimir Komarov, one of the first Russian cosmonauts. He knew the Soyuz space capsule was unsafe. He told them repeatedly, but flew anyway to spare the life of his replacement pilot. Before liftoff he demanded that when he died, all officials at the Kremlin would have to attend his funeral and see what they did to him. All they were able to retrieve was a charred heel bone. Top image of the Kremlin officials at his open casket funeral. What makes this even worse is a recording of the fatal crash from listening post still exists. It's a haunting listen. From the article, as Komarov was headed to his doom, U.S. listening posts in Turkey heard him crying in rage, cursing the people who had put him inside a botched spaceship. He told ground control officials he knew he was about to die. Quote, yeah. His wife and children were also listening, while the Kremlin commander was calling on the video feed congratulating him on becoming a hero for completing the mission. The whole thing is surreal. Replacement pilot who would have been Yuri Gagarin, who, if my memory serves, was one of his close friends. John O'Neill, headed the investigation of the attack on the USS Cole. Warned FBI about Al-Qaeda and bin Laden. Was basically told to shut up. Left the FBI to head security at the World Trade Center because he knew there would be another attack there eventually after the first car bombing in the parking ramp. He died on 9/11. Related, Rick Rescola. He was the head of security for Morgan Stanley in the Twin Towers. After the first bombing, he implemented evacuation plans and a buddy system to get everyone out in an emergency. He saved 2,700 on 9/11, the company only lost 10. Rick was one of them. He was last seen going back into Tower 2 to sweep for survivors. The man was brilliant, he's one of my heroes. https www.newyorker.com/magazine/2002/11/September-11th/Trade-Center-Rick-Rescola. Real heroes are dead. Rick was originally from the UK and served in the US Army in Vietnam. He fought in the famous Battle of Ia Drang Valley and his photo was on the cover of the original We Were Soldiers Once and Young. https en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/we_once%e2%80%a6_young. I reread that article every year on the anniversary. The last line always hits me like a truck. You see, for Rick Rescorla, this was a natural death. People like Rick, they don't die old men. They aren't destined for that, and it isn't right for them to do so. It just isn't right, by God, for them to become feeble, old, and helpless sons of bitches. There are certain men born in this world, and they're supposed to die setting an example for the rest of the weak bastards we're surrounded with.